Do not wait for me tonight, Adrian. Claire Bennet whispered the words so softly that the music nearly swallowed them. But somewhere beneath the silver chandeliers and the crimson banners of Blackwood Palace, she felt as though fate itself had heard her. The Blood Moon Feast had drawn every powerful family in the Northern Territories into the royal hall. Hundreds of wolves dressed in velvet, silk, and ceremonial silver, all waiting for Alpha King Adrian Blackwood to make the declaration that would shape the kingdom. Claire stood near the edge of the crowd in a simple emerald gown, one hand curled around a small velvet box hidden against her palm. Inside rested a tiny silver bracelet no wider than her thumb, engraved with the Blackwood crest. She had bought it 3 days earlier, after healer Margaret Reed had taken Claire's trembling hands and confirmed what she had barely dared to believe. There was a child growing inside her. Adrian's child. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in courage and destiny, hit like and subscribe. These stories remind us, love finds the broken. Now back to Claire. She had imagined telling Adrian after the feast, when the doors were closed and he was no longer a king surrounded by advisors, but simply the man who sometimes found her in the palace gardens and forgot, for a few quiet minutes, how to be cold. Then Adrian rose from the obsidian throne. Conversation vanished. He looked exactly as a king should beneath the blood-red moonlight pouring through the high windows. Tall, composed, dark-haired, his silver-gray eyes revealing nothing. Vanessa Hale stood among the noble families near the front, radiant in white. Claire noticed her smile before Adrian spoke. Tonight, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the hall, Blackwood must choose its future. Claire's heartbeat stumbled. Her fingers tightened around the velvet box. Adrian descended the steps. Once, twice. Then he stopped before Vanessa. A strange stillness entered Claire's chest. Vanessa Hale, Adrian said, come forward. Applause erupted around her. Claire heard none of it. Clearly, she watched Vanessa approach him. She watched Adrian accept the ceremonial silver chain from the royal elder. And then she understood. This was not diplomacy. This was a declaration. Adrian was publicly choosing Vanessa for the royal mark. Claire waited for him to look at her. Perhaps that was the cruelest part. He did. Across hundreds of faces, his silver eyes found hers for one brief second. Something uncertain flickered there, almost like regret. But he turned away. The ceremony continued. Claire looked down at the tiny box in her hand. She did not cry. She did not demand an explanation. She simply placed her other hand over the secret beneath her heart and understood, with a clarity colder than winter, that her child would never grow up watching its mother beg to be chosen. While the hall celebrated its future Luna, Claire stepped backward into the shadows. By the time Adrian finally looked toward the place where she had been standing, there was only empty marble beneath the blood-red moonlight. Claire was already walking toward her room, and before sunrise, she intended to be gone. Claire closed the door to her room and rested her back against it until the distant celebration became nothing more than a muffled rhythm beneath the palace walls. Her hands were steady now. That surprised her. She had imagined heartbreak as something loud, something that shattered a person all at once. Instead, it felt strangely quiet. She crossed the small room and placed the velvet box on her bedside table. For several seconds, she stared at the tiny silver bracelet inside. She had pictured Adrian holding it. She had pictured the disbelief leaving his face, replaced by that rare softness he showed only when no one else was watching. None of those moments belonged to her anymore. Claire pulled a traveling bag from beneath the bed and packed only what she could carry: 2 dresses, a wool coat, a few coins, and the worn leather book her mother had given her years ago. A soft knock came at the door. Claire. Margaret Reed entered before Claire could answer. The older healer stopped when she saw the open bag. You are leaving. Claire folded her coat carefully. Before sunrise, Margaret crossed the room. Adrian does not know about the baby. No. Then tell him. Claire finally looked at her. He made his choice in front of the entire kingdom. Kings make foolish choices. Then kings must live with them. There was no anger in Claire's voice. That made Margaret's expression soften with sorrow. Claire picked up the royal pendant Adrian had given her the previous winter. For months, she had worn the silver wolf beneath her clothing, close to her heart. Now she placed it beside the unopened bracelet. If a man has to lose me before he understands my worth, I cannot raise my child waiting for him to understand it too. Margaret reached for her hand. Where will you go? Somewhere my child will never be treated as a mistake. Claire wrote only 3 sentences on a sheet of cream-colored paper. She did not mention the child. She did not mention Vanessa. She simply thanked Adrian for the kindness he had once shown her and asked him not to search for her. Then she signed her name. No Luna. No Omega. Just Claire Bennett. Near 4 in the morning, she slipped through the servants' corridor while the final music from the feast faded behind her. Margaret had arranged a carriage waiting beyond the eastern gate. The driver asked no questions. Claire climbed inside and pulled her coat tighter as Blackwood Palace disappeared behind the trees. 20 miles away, she finally allowed herself to look back. Nothing remained but darkness against the horizon. She placed a hand over her stomach. We will be all right, she whispered. Back at the palace, Adrian woke suddenly in his private chamber. The room was silent, yet something had changed. He sat upright, breathing slowly, searching for the familiar presence he had spent months pretending meant nothing. That faint warmth was gone. Adrian crossed to the window. Dawn had begun turning the horizon pale gold. For reasons he could not explain, one name rose immediately to his lips. Claire. Adrian was already halfway down the eastern corridor when Ethan Cole found him. The royal beta had changed out of his ceremonial clothes, but Adrian still wore the black shirt from the feast, its collar open as though he had dressed in a hurry. Where is Claire? Adrian asked. Ethan hesitated. That single pause tightened something inside Adrian. I asked you where she is. No one has seen her since last night. Adrian turned toward Claire's rooms without another word. He told himself she was angry. She had every right to be. Perhaps she had gone to the gardens or the old chapel where she sometimes disappeared when the palace became too loud. But when he opened her door, the silence inside felt different. Permanent. Morning light stretched across a neatly made bed. Her closet stood partly empty. The worn leather book she always kept beside the window was gone. Adrian stepped farther inside and noticed a folded sheet of paper on the table. His name was written across it in Claire's careful handwriting. He read the 3 sentences once. Then again, thank you for every kindness you once showed me. I hope the future you chose brings your kingdom peace. Please do not search for me. Claire Bennett. Adrian stared at the signature. No accusation. No demand. Somehow that hurt more. His gaze moved to the silver wolf pendant beside the letter. He had given it to her during the first snowfall of winter. She had worn it every day since. Now it lay abandoned beneath the morning sun. Send riders to every gate, Adrian said. Ethan remained near the doorway. Adrian, she asked you not to search. I am the king. That does not make her request meaningless. Adrian looked at him, but before he could answer, Margaret Reed appeared in the hall. The healer's expression stopped him. She carried something small in her palm. Your Majesty, Margaret said quietly. There is something you should know. She entered and placed a tiny silver bracelet on the table. Adrian frowned. The Blackwood crest had been engraved into its delicate surface. It was far too small for an adult. His breathing slowed. What is that? Margaret looked directly at him. Claire bought it 3 days ago. Adrian did not move. Why? Margaret's eyes filled with disappointment rather than fear. Because she was going to tell you after the feast. The room seemed to lose every sound. Adrian looked from the bracelet to Claire's letter. Tell me what? Margaret drew a slow breath. Claire is carrying your child. Adrian's fingers closed around the edge of the table. For the first time in years, the Alpha King had no answer. The memory returned with merciless clarity. Claire beneath the crimson banners, holding something against her palm, waiting for him to look at her. He had looked. Then he had turned away. How long, he asked. Long enough that she was certain. Adrian picked up the bracelet. It nearly disappeared inside his hand. Why did she not tell me? Margaret's reply came softly. She came there intending to. Adrian was moving before the sentence ended. He crossed the corridor, descended the grand staircase, and ordered the eastern gate opened. Outside, dawn had burned away the last traces of night. He shifted his attention toward the distant roads, searching instinctively for the familiar warmth he had awakened without. Nothing answered. Claire's presence had vanished beyond Blackwood territory. Ethan stopped several feet behind him. Which road? Adrian asked. We do not know. Adrian looked down at the tiny bracelet in his hand. Hours earlier, an entire kingdom had watched him choose its future. Now, beneath the pale morning sky, Adrian finally understood what that choice had cost him. By noon, Vanessa Hale was standing beneath the moonstone in the royal sanctuary, dressed in white and waiting for the kingdom to recognize what she believed had already become hers. Adrian stood beside her, but his thoughts were 20 miles beyond the eastern gate, chasing a carriage no scout had managed to find. Claire was carrying his child. The words had followed him through every corridor since Margaret spoke them. He could still feel the tiny bracelet inside his coat pocket, heavier than any crown he had ever worn. "Your Majesty." The royal elder lifted both hands toward the moonstone. The marking was witnessed beneath the blood moon. Now the stone must recognize the bond before the court names its Luna. Vanessa smiled. Around them, members of the council waited in ceremonial silence. Adrian barely looked at her. The elder began the ancient vow, and Vanessa placed her palm against the pale stone. Everyone waited. Nothing happened. The moonstone remained cold and colorless. A whisper moved through the sanctuary. Vanessa withdrew her hand. Again, the elder hesitated. "Lady Hale, the stone does not make mistakes." Then the ritual was performed incorrectly. It was performed exactly as tradition requires. Adrian finally raised his eyes. Vanessa's confidence flickered. "What should have happened?" he asked. The elder turned toward him. "If the woman carrying the royal mark is recognized as the king's true Luna," the moonstone answers. "How?" "With light." Adrian looked at the lifeless stone. "And if it remains dark?" No one wanted to answer. Ethan did. Then the mark changed nothing. Vanessa turned sharply toward him. "You have no authority to interpret sacred law." "But I do." Adrian's voice silenced the room. Vanessa faced him, her expression carefully controlled. "Adrian, this is only an old ceremony. Last night you called it the foundation of royal legitimacy." Her smile disappeared. Before she could answer, Ethan approached with a leather folder beneath his arm. "There is something else." Adrian recognized the royal intelligence seal. Ethan opened the folder and removed several reports. These were delivered to the council during the past 2 months. They concern Claire. Adrian took the first page. He remembered reading versions of these reports before the feast. Claire had supposedly met secretly with representatives from rival packs. She had allegedly questioned Adrian's rule. One report even suggested she planned to leave Blackwood before winter. Those reports had helped convince him that whatever existed between them had never meant to Claire what it meant to him. Ethan placed another document beside it. "This is the original." Adrian compared the pages. A sentence had been changed. Then another. Claire had not met a rival representative. She had helped his injured daughter find a healer while the family traveled through Blackwood territory. Adrian reached for the next report. More changes. Small ones. Careful ones. Each alteration transformed an innocent action into something suspicious. Who had access to these? Adrian asked. Ethan looked toward Vanessa. The room became very still. Vanessa lifted her chin. "Many people have access to council correspondence." Ethan produced one final sheet. Not to the private copies bearing the Hale family cipher. For the first time, genuine fear crossed Vanessa's face. Adrian felt no satisfaction. Only a colder realization. He had wanted reasons not to trust what he felt for Claire, and someone had conveniently supplied them. Yet Vanessa had not forced him to believe those pages. Vanessa had not made him look away from Claire beneath the blood moon. That choice had been his. Adrian reached into his coat and closed his hand around the tiny silver bracelet. "Find every original report," he told Ethan. "Every letter. Every messenger. I want the truth." Then he looked at the dark moonstone and understood something far worse than deception. The kingdom had not chosen the wrong Luna. He had. Vanessa did not deny it. That was what Adrian remembered most clearly afterward. She stood beneath the silent moonstone with her shoulders straight and her white ceremonial gown glowing in the afternoon light, as if confidence alone could turn deception into truth. Ethan had spent 6 hours tracing letters, messenger records, and council copies. By sunset, the evidence covered half the long table in Adrian's private council chamber. Claire's words had been shortened. Her meetings had been misrepresented. Messages meant for Adrian had never reached him. Even Margaret's request for a private audience concerning Claire had been delayed until after the feast. "Why?" Adrian asked. Vanessa looked at him across the table. "Because you were going to choose her eventually. She was an Omega with no family influence." "Exactly." Vanessa stepped closer. "You rule 23 packs. You needed an alliance. not a woman who spent her mornings helping servants and her evenings hiding in gardens. Adrian's expression hardened. You thought kindness made her unworthy? I thought kindness made her politically useless. The words settled heavily between them. Adrian remembered Claire bringing soup to an elderly groundskeeper during a winter storm. He remembered her learning the names of every kitchen worker while nobles struggled to remember the names of their own guards. He remembered how peaceful the palace felt whenever she entered a room. All the things Vanessa considered weaknesses were suddenly the things he missed most. You altered royal intelligence. I showed you what you were already prepared to believe. Adrian went still. Vanessa must have seen something change in his face because her confidence returned. That is the truth, Adrian. I did not make you doubt her. I only gave your doubt a voice. Ethan looked toward the king, but Adrian raised a hand. Vanessa was right about one thing, and he hated her for being right. He could punish deception. He could correct the records. He could remove every official who had participated. But none of that changed the moment beneath the blood moon when Claire had waited for him to choose, and he had chosen fear instead. The royal recognition ceremony is cancelled, Adrian said. Vanessa's face lost its color. You cannot do that. Your title is revoked pending a full council inquiry. You will return to the Heir estate tonight. For Claire, Vanessa demanded. She left you. Adrian reached into his pocket and placed the tiny silver bracelet on the table. Vanessa stared at it. She was going to tell me I was going to be a father. Silence followed. Vanessa looked away first. Adrian turned to Etha. 3 years later, Claire Bennett woke before sunrise to the sound of small feet crossing the wooden floor. She opened her eyes just as Noah climbed onto the edge of her bed, his dark hair pointing in every direction and his silver-gray eyes bright with importance. Mama, the chickens are awake. Claire smiled despite herself. The chickens are always awake before you. Not today. He whispered it as though reporting a royal emergency. Claire pulled the quilt around his shoulders and kissed his forehead. Outside their cottage, morning mist rested over the Blue Ridge Mountains, turning the distant trees blue beneath the first light. Their settlement was small enough that everyone knew when someone baked bread, lost a sheep, or needed help repairing a roof. There were no marble halls here, no servants, no nobles measuring a person's worth by bloodline. Claire had arrived with one bag, a little money, and a secret she had promised to protect. 3 years later, she had a home. She worked beside the settlement healer, using the gentle instincts that Blackwood society had dismissed as ordinary Omega softness. Here, people valued them. They came to Claire with frightened children, restless newborn pups, and worries they could not explain. She listened. Often, that was enough. Noah followed her everywhere. He had Claire's dark hair and her quiet way of watching people before speaking, but his eyes belonged entirely to Adrian. Sometimes Claire would catch the morning light, turning them almost silver, and memory would return without permission. Adrian standing beneath crimson banners. Adrian looking across the feast toward her. Adrian turning away. She no longer allowed the memory to decide what kind of day she would have. Breakfast first, she told Noah. Then you can save the chickens from whatever disaster they are facing. Noah grinned and raced toward the kitchen. Claire watched him go, her hand resting briefly against the doorframe. She had never told him his father was a king. She had only said that his father lived far away and that grown people sometimes made choices they wished they could change. One day Noah would deserve the whole truth. She simply did not know when that day would come. Nearly 400 miles north, Adrian Blackwood stood before a map covered with notes from 3 years of searching. He had changed in ways his council noticed, but rarely mentioned. The king who once made decisions before others finished speaking now listened. He had rewritten laws protecting lower-ranking wolves from forced bonds and removed bloodline restrictions from several royal offices. None of it brought Claire back. That was not why he did it anymore. Ethan entered carrying a sealed report. There is a dispute near the Blue Ridge settlements. 2 neighboring packs are arguing over access to winter grazing land. Adrian barely glanced up. Send a mediator. I was going to. Ethan placed the report on the desk. Then I read. The witness list. Adrian looked at him. Ethan tapped one name near the bottom. Claire Bennett. For several seconds, Adrian forgot how to breathe. He picked up the page and read the name twice, afraid it might disappear between one heartbeat and the next. How old is this report? 6 days. Is it confirmed? A woman named Claire Bennett works with the local healer. brown hair, green eyes. Arrived almost 3 years ago. Adrian's hand moved instinctively toward the silver bracelet he still carried inside his coat. Ethan watched him carefully. There is something else. The report mentions her son. Adrian slowly raised his eyes. Her son. Ethan nodded. 3 years old. By noon, Adrian was riding south. 2 days later, the mountains rose around him beneath a clear autumn sky. He entered the settlement without banners or royal guards, wearing a plain dark coat. Children were playing near a wooden fence when a little boy turned at the sound of Adrian's horse. Adrian looked down. The child looked up. Silver-gray eyes met silver-gray eyes, and the entire world seemed to stop. Adrian forgot the dispute that had brought him south. He forgot the horse beneath him, the road behind him, and the 3 years he had spent imagining what he would say if he ever found Claire again. The little boy stood beside the wooden fence with one hand wrapped around a carved toy wolf. Dark hair fell across his forehead. His face was unfamiliar, yet those silver-gray eyes were not. Adrian had seen them in mirrors his entire life. The boy studied him with the fearless curiosity only a child could possess. "Are you lost?" he asked. Adrian slowly dismounted. "Maybe I was." The boy considered this seriously. "Mama says lost people should ask for directions." Adrian almost smiled. "Your mother sounds wise." "She is." Pride filled the answer. Then a woman's voice carried across the settlement. "Noah." Adrian became completely still. Claire emerged from the healer's cottage carrying a basket of folded linens. 3 years disappeared in a single heartbeat. Her brown hair was longer, tied loosely behind her shoulders, and the simple blue dress she wore belonged to this quiet mountain life. More naturally than anything she had worn at Blackwood Palace. She looked peaceful, until she saw him. The basket slipped slightly in her hands. Adrian took one instinctive step forward. Claire immediately crossed the distance to Noah and placed herself between them. The movement was gentle, but its meaning was unmistakable. Adrian stopped. Claire. Her name sounded different after 3 years of silence. Noah looked from his mother to the stranger. "Mama, do you know him?" Claire rested a hand on her son's shoulder. "Yes." Adrian's gaze returned to Noah. Questions crowded his mind, but one escaped before he could stop it. "How old is he?" Claire's expression cooled. "You already know." Adrian swallowed. "I need to hear you say it." 3. The answer struck deeper than any accusation could have. Adrian looked at Noah again, noticing everything now. The shape of his eyebrows, the determined set of his small chin, the Blackwood silver in his eyes. His son. Claire had carried this child away before sunrise, raised him through his first winter, heard his first word, watched his first steps. Adrian had missed all of it. "His name is Noah Bennett," Claire said. Adrian understood the boundary inside those 3 words. Not Blackwood. Bennett. Does he know? Not yet. Noah tugged gently at Claire's sleeve. "Know what?" Claire crouched until they were eye level. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetheart. Could you take these linens to Miss Margaret's sister inside?" Noah nodded, accepted the basket with great concentration, then glanced once more at Adrian before disappearing through the cottage door. Adrian waited until it closed. "I searched for you." Claire looked toward the mountains. "I know." He blinked. "You knew?" Travelers talked about royal riders. Every few months someone came asking questions. "Why did you keep hiding?" Claire finally faced him. "Because I needed to know whether I could build a life without waiting for you to choose me." Adrian had no defense against that. "And did you?" Her eyes softened, but not for him. They moved toward the cottage where Noah had disappeared. "Yes." Adrian reached inside his coat and removed the tiny silver bracelet. Claire's breath caught. "You kept it?" "Every day." For one dangerous second, hope rose inside him. Then Claire stepped closer, her voice quiet and firm. "Do not mistake keeping a bracelet for earning a place in his life." Adrian lowered his hand. "I would never take him from you. You are a king. You could. I will not." Claire searched his face as though looking for the man she remembered beneath the one standing before her. Adrian looked toward the cottage door. "May I know him?" Claire was silent for a long moment. "You do not get to arrive here and call him your heir." Adrian nodded. "Then tell me what I am allowed to call him." Claire's answer was almost a whisper. "Start with his name." Adrian stayed in the settlement, but he did not stay in Claire's cottage. That mattered to her. He rented a small room above the general store, ate at the same wooden tables as everyone else, and never once mentioned the crown when someone treated him like an ordinary traveler. The first morning, Noah found him repairing a loose board on the healer's porch. "Kings do that?" the boy asked. Adrian nearly dropped the hammer. Claire, standing several feet away with a basket of herbs, closed her eyes. "You told him?" Adrian asked. "Last night." Noah studied him with enormous silver-gray eyes. "Mama said you are my father too." Adrian slowly set the hammer down. "She told you the truth. Do I have to call you father?" The question was so serious that Adrian crouched to meet his gaze. "You do not have to call me anything you are not ready to call me." Noah considered that. "Can I call you Adrian?" "I would like that." Claire watched from the porch. 3 years earlier, Adrian would have expected obedience simply because of who he was. Now he waited for permission from a 3-year-old. It frightened her how much that difference mattered. Days passed. Adrian never arrived with expensive gifts. When Noah broke the wheel on his wooden wagon, Adrian fixed it. When the settlement prepared for the first cold nights of fall, Adrian helped stack firewood behind the healer's cottage. When Claire carried medicine to an elderly couple living 2 miles beyond town, he walked beside her without asking to take the basket from her until she offered it. He did not speak about returning to Blackwood. He did not speak about maid bonds. Most importantly, he did not ask Claire to forgive him. One evening, Noah fell asleep beside the fireplace with his carved wolf tucked beneath his arm. Adrian covered him with a blanket and remained there for a moment, looking at the child whose first 3 years existed only in stories he had not yet heard. Claire stood in the doorway. "He likes you," she said. Adrian rose. "That does not mean you have to." "I know. Claire, I need you to understand something." She waited. Vanessa changed the reports. She blocked messages. She manipulated the council. Claire's expression became guarded. Adrian continued before she could answer. "But she did not make my choice for me." Claire went still. "I spent years wanting the truth to make me less guilty. It never did." His voice remained quiet. "I should have trusted you. I should have spoken to you. I should have looked at you that night and cared more about what was in your eyes than what was written on a council page." Claire looked toward Noah. "You cannot return those years." "I know. You cannot give him his first steps again." "I know. And you cannot erase what happened to me." Adrian swallowed. "I know." No promises followed. No royal declaration. Just silence and the crackle of the fireplace. Claire realized that this was the first apology he had ever given her without asking for something in return. A sleepy voice interrupted them. "Mama." Noah sat up, rubbing his eyes. Adrian turned. Noah held out one small hand toward him. "Are you leaving?" "Not tonight." Noah hesitated. "Good." Adrian smiled faintly and helped him stand. Noah leaned against his side, still half asleep. Then, without warning, the child murmured, "Dad, can you carry me to bed?" Adrian froze. Claire's breath caught. Noah seemed unaware of what he had said. Adrian did not move until his eyes found Claire's. He waited. Claire looked at the man who once believed being king gave him the right to choose for everyone. Now he would not even lift his own son without her consent. Slowly, Claire nodded. Only then did Adrian gather Noah into his arms. 3 weeks later, Claire returned to Blackwood Palace by choice. That difference changed everything. No royal carriage had been sent to collect her. No decree had summoned her home. She arrived beside Adrian with Noah between them, his small hand holding hers as the familiar towers rose beyond the autumn trees. Claire expected old fear to return when she entered the great hall. Instead, she felt strangely calm. The crimson banners were gone. Morning sunlight poured through the high windows where blood moon shadows had once covered the marble floor. Hundreds of wolves filled the hall, but this time Claire did not stand at the edge. Adrian stood before the throne and waited until every voice became silent. Ethan remained near the council table. Margaret smiled through shining eyes. Noah stayed beside Claire, wearing the tiny silver bracelet she had bought more than 3 years earlier. Adrian had fastened it around his son's wrist that morning with trembling fingers. 3 years ago, Adrian began. "I stood in this hall and made a choice I believed served this kingdom." His silver-gray eyes found Claire. "I was wrong." A murmur moved through the court. Adrian continued. "Documents were altered. Messages were hidden. People I trusted manipulated the truth. Those responsible have answered before the council. But deception does not excuse the decision I made. I chose suspicion over trust, pride over honesty, and someone else paid the price." Claire felt Noah squeeze her fingers. Adrian descended from the throne. Noah Bennett is my son. The hall became completely still. Adrian looked down at the boy. He is also my recognized heir, if one day he chooses to accept that responsibility. Claire's eyes widened slightly. Even Noah's future, Adrian was leaving to Noah. Then Adrian turned toward her. The royal elder approached, carrying the ceremonial chain used to recognize Aluna. Adrian did not take it. Instead, he raised one hand, and the elder stopped. No. Adrian stepped toward Claire with nothing in his hands. No crown. No mark. No command. Then the Alpha King lowered himself to one knee before the Omega he had once allowed to walk away alone. Claire heard the court inhale as one. I cannot return the years I lost, Adrian said. I cannot erase the morning you left. And I will never ask destiny to make this decision for you. His voice softened. Claire Bennett, if you choose the mountains, Noah and I will visit you there. If you choose Blackwood, this palace will become your home on your terms. If you choose neither, I will still honor you. I am not asking my Luna to return. I am asking Claire whether she wants a future with me. Tears warmed Claire's eyes, but this time they carried no humiliation. She remembered the man who had once turned away because a kingdom was watching. Now the same kingdom watched him surrender the one thing he had guarded most fiercely, control. Claire stepped closer. Stand up, Adrian. He obeyed. She took his hand. I will not be chosen because the moonstone says I belong to you. Never. And I will never disappear inside your crown. Never. Claire looked at Noah, then back at Adrian. Then I choose to stay. The moonstone across the hall suddenly filled with soft silver light. No one had touched it. Adrian barely glanced toward it. His eyes remained on Claire. This time, destiny had spoken only after she had. Noah slipped between them and took both their hands. Outside, dawn spread gold across Blackwood Valley, and Claire understood that forgiveness had never meant returning to the life she lost. It meant choosing what came next without surrendering herself. Sometimes true strength was not found in commanding someone to stay. It was found in becoming gentle enough to let them choose. And if this story of second chances, courage, and love touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more stories where kindness matters. Choices have consequences, and even a king can learn that love must be earned.